9 years ago, the direction of my life changed drastically when I had an experience in poverty that was personal and real. My name is Matt Jones, the most normal name you can imagine. And I had a normal, suburban, middle-class life. A few kids, a dog, a couple cars, a pool in the backyard, and I was surrounded by families just like mine. I heard the statistics, the ones you hear, the ones that tell us that millions of people around the world are impoverished, and because of that poverty, people die. But it didn't affect my life. I never once wondered where my next meal was coming from. As I grew older, I learned that statistics are actually really harsh. Today, 736 million people around the globe live in desperate, extreme poverty. Because of that poverty, hundreds of thousands of children die each month. Hundreds of thousands. But as humans, I don't believe we're made to understand these type of statistics. These numbers are too large. It's like grasping a cloud. We can't comprehend it. I understand mathematically that 736 million is more than double the population of the United States. But I can't feel it. I can't touch it. Then I learned a statistic that hit me deeper back in 2010. I learned that 54% of Haitians that time lived on $1 a day or less. $1 for food, drink, transportation, for their education, their rent, for everything. I could understand that statistic. I could understand it because it meant more than half of the Haitian population lived on $1 a day. That one hit me. My faith motivated me to get involved. So my brother and I talked and we said, what could we do to help? Could we try to understand what it means to be impoverished? What would that look like? We decided that we were going to travel to Haiti, that we were going to try to understand what it looked like to live on $1 a day. In order to do that, we challenged each other to live for 1 month, 28 days, on $1 a day. Now, if you can recall, in 2010, something else happened to Haiti, much more important than me traveling there. An earthquake hit, devastating the country. Into this poverty was destruction and death. 200,000 passed away. 1 million were displaced. In the aftermath of that, we took a plane down, my brother and I and 2 friends, with the idea that we were going to live among the people who were displaced, live on $1 a day and understand their pain, if we could, in some small way. When we arrived, we came off the plane and we walked out onto the tarmac, and the heat hits you like a blanket. Humidity, you can't imagine. Instantly, you're sweating as you walk toward the airport. It's more of a warehouse than an airport. Instead of having a conveyor belt bring your baggage in, a few workers pull them in behind them, and they hand them to you. As we got on the bus to travel to downtown Port-au-Prince, where we were going to stay, the smells of the burning trash, the garbage hit my nostrils. I could see the buildings that had collapsed in the earthquake, rubble in the street. Our bus had to go around the rubble, make its way. What I learned later is we were passing by thousands of bodies that had still not yet been recovered. I knew it would be hard to live on $1 a day. I knew it would affect my body. But what I didn't understand is how much it would affect my emotions, my mind, my intellect. The experience there depressed me. It broke me. Not because of the challenge of living on a small amount of food, but because of the challenge of meeting people who lived in that same circumstance their entire life. I could now taste, touch, and feel poverty. More than that, I knew people. I knew people who lived it every day. I met Bennett, this man who had wonderful English, and I talked to him at length. He was a day laborer, which meant each day he would wake up, go out into the hot sun, shovel, move rocks, rubble, do whatever he could to earn a living. He would work his butt off. He spoke to me about what it felt like at night to lie in his bed and to hear his little boy saying, "Dad, I'm hungry. Dad, I'm hungry." He told me it broke his heart that he couldn't do anything about it. I met Taisha, this beautiful little girl, 5 years old. Because of poverty, she was orphaned. She didn't have a father or a mother. I met another woman, a nameless woman, later on. I don't know her name. I don't have her picture. But she walked up, and under each arm she had a twin 2-year-old boy. She offered to give them away. They were undernourished, and she wanted them to have a future, an education. She was willing to give her own children away in order to give them a chance. As a father, I can't imagine that. I can't imagine it. My brother and I, Andrew and I, came home, and we co-founded Poverty Resolutions, dedicated to eradicating poverty around the globe. We got involved, we jumped in. And as we began to understand poverty more fully and how to combat it, we understood that it was expansive, deep, and difficult. But there's hope. There's hope if you and I get involved. We also learned that slavery, something that I thought when I grew up in my normal life was history, was eradicated. It's what you study. It's not something you experience. What I found out is that slavery is now alive and well, and that's not okay. In fact, around the globe today, they tell us that 40 million are enslaved, another number that is too vast to understand, another number that is so big, it's crushing. So to make it a little more real, I want to tell you the story of one little girl who was enslaved just recently. You see, last week, just a few days ago, I was in Calcutta, and while there, I visited a home that when girls are rescued out of slavery, underage girls, not women, they bring them to this home. They educate them, they counsel them, they come alongside them and try to help turn around their lives. They love them the way they should be loved, the way children should be loved. And one story that comes from Calcutta that broke my heart is the story of a girl. I have permission from her to tell it. She's of age now to give permission, but I'm going to keep her name anonymous. I'm going to call her Benson. But before I tell the story of Benson, I want to introduce you to my daughter, Abigail. The reason I want to do this is because I think often when we hear the story of someone there, we as Westerners, as the educated, we separate ourselves from these stories. They're not real to us. They're somewhere far away. But my daughter, Abigail, is 10 years of age, the exact same age as Benson when this story begins. Benson was born in the mountains of Nepal, desperately poor. She grew up, and by the age of 10, she had never once been to school. Often, her family, which consisted of both her parents and 7 children, often her family didn't have enough food on the table. Often, they worried where their next meal would come from. When she was 10 years old, her much older sister approached her and said, "Benson, you can help our family. You can do it. If you're willing to travel to Kathmandu, to work, to get a job, you can send money back and help care for our family." Benson didn't want to do it, but she got assurances from her sister that if she went there, she'd be able to get an education, be able to make a difference for our family. In Kathmandu, they had good schools, good food. She'd have a chance. So she agreed. Her sister took her a few towns away and handed her over to a child sex trafficker. He took her to Kathmandu as promised. Benson was excited. She had never once been to the big city, the tall buildings, the modern lights and excitement. I mean, How exciting is that for someone who lives in a village and didn't even have enough food? But the excitement was short-lived because the very next day, the man put her on a bus and took her over the border into India, all the way to Calcutta. She didn't know the language. She didn't know the culture. She didn't know what was going on. But it wasn't what she expected. When she arrived, the man handed her over to an older lady who kept children like her. The lady assessed her and started to feed her, and for a few months put her on a hormone treatment to help her body develop at 10 years old. And then they put her on the streets, forced to do unspeakable things, things that no child should ever endure. She was tortured, sexually assaulted, beaten. She was eventually rescued and taken to a house like the one that I was at this past week. A house that loves these kids coming out of this. They took care of her. They educated her. They stepped in on her behalf. They stepped in and loved her. They made it personal. Now, if you talk to her today, she's about 20, she's being educated, she's in college, she has hope for a future because people stepped in on her behalf. My concern is those of us who are in the West, you and I, those of us who live normal lives, it's all too easy to be ignorant of what's going on around the world. Benson is one of 40 million. My question for you, if you could step in, would you do it? Would you help? If it costs you time or money, would you step in on behalf of someone who's impoverished or enslaved? The fact is, whether you live in the suburbs of Philadelphia or in a high-rise in Calcutta, there is someone near you who's impoverished or enslaved. There's a young girl doing things she does not want to do, just wanting to go home. There are countless business opportunities, nonprofit organizations, religious institutions, and sponsorship programs like the one I manage that can help you to understand, to connect personally with someone in deep need. My hope is that you choose to do that. I've stepped in. I've learned the power of the personal. I hope you choose to do the same. Thank you.